we are. Hey everybody. How's it going? Welcome back to another episode of Eric Screws Around with Camera Equipment. I today wanted to show you guys a little something that was on my mind. Again, I'm curious about something. I wondered, they'll probably think about it too. They'll probably care about it. And so I want to show you guys a comparison of two equivalent focal lengths from two different systems. This is a very flawed test, but just so you guys can have the visual representation of what it actually means. Should I turn product showcase on? Hold on. Oh, look at that. Is it on? In one corner, we have the Fuji 35mm f1.4 lens. This is, I think, considered by most, if not all, one of the best, if not the best, Fuji 50mm equivalent lens. And on the other hand, we have the 25mm f1.2 Pro lens from Olympus on a micro four thirds camera, obviously. This is the best micro four thirds 25 or 50mm equivalent lens. And so I wanted to see what is the actual difference between the two. Now, this is an imperfect test, as I mentioned. So before we get into this, I want to kind of lay the ground rules of how I decided to do this. I put the micro four thirds camera into 3:2 aspect ratio because this is 20 megapixels. And the Fuji is 16 megapixels, so it kind of evens out a little bit from that perspective. Not really, but you guys know what I'm saying. And I didn't want the more square format for 4/3 aspect ratio to look that much different from 3:2, which the Fuji shoots on. I also shot these all in RAW, and I edited them all in Lightroom, and I applied the same preset. And the only thing I did after applying the preset was fix the geometry with the auto correction inside Lightroom. Okay, so things that are wrong that might come up from this might be Lightroom related, might be my issues, or whatever. So I wanted to shoot 3 photos wide open of different subjects, different lengths, to kind of show the difference in depth of field and also in the detail that you get from it. And I shot one at f5.6. So let me go through the 4 photos. These are not perfect by any means, and there are some concerns with how they were shot. So take all this with a grain of salt, but for somebody who just wants to kind of see, hey, what is the actual difference? Let's go through these. And the most interesting thing to me was actually color output. So let's start with the first image, and let's go through this. Okay, the first image that I shot was of this stick figure Rudolph the reindeer thing that's in my front landscaping right now. Sorry, there's somebody running by. Hold on one second. He's passed. All right, the first image was this Rudolph the reindeer stick figure thing. I shot it at f1.2 on the Olympus and f1.4 on the Fuji. I stood in the same spot. I tried to get the same focus point. I tried to get the same positioning and angle. And these are the 2 images. I'll put them up, the Olympus first and the Fuji second. Now there's 2 things I notice right away. First of all, the color is different. The Olympus seems a bit darker. Maybe it's because of the metering. The greens are a bit different. The orangish brownish color of Rudolph is different. But something else sticks out to me as well. And if you look closely, which is hard to do here on YouTube with the compression, there's a lot more detail in the Olympus file than there is compared to the Fuji file. Now, I don't know if this is a Lightroom thing, or if you were to open this up in Capture One, you get a different result for the Fuji, especially in terms of color and detail. But it seems like the Olympus file is a lot sharper to me. Now, they're both very sharp, so it's not really an issue there. The other one is the depth of field difference. If you look at the 2 images, you can certainly tell the micro four thirds image isn't quite as shallow, but not a huge difference. I think if you take the equivalency, you're at 2.4 on a full frame for the Olympus, and you're on like 2.1 for the Fuji. So not a big difference, plenty of depth of field in my opinion, but that was the first test. Let me know what you guys think about that. Let's move on to the second image before I die. And that was stopping these both down f5.6. Now again, you're gonna have more depth of field, a deeper depth of field on the Olympus because it is a 4/3 sensor at f5.6, but I want to keep the exposures relatively the same. When you look at both here, I'm looking at both these on my phone as I talk to you guys. If you look at both of these, I think they both did a really good job. What was interesting was when I put that preset onto this, the whites in the Fuji were more white, which you can easily change. The colors seemed a little bit warmer on the Olympus. Again, that's a raw file, so you can change that no problem whatsoever. But again, if I zoom in, and I'm doing this right now, I'm looking at like the bricks, the wood shingling, what they call it on my house. There's more detail on the Olympus file than the Fuji file. So to me, that's very interesting. And again, this could just be lens differences. So there's that. Now let's go to the third image. Now this one I have to give you a little caveat. I did miss focus a little bit, but I'll talk about that in a second. This is a Frosty the Snowman. Again, image 1 is the Olympus and image 2 is the Fuji. A couple things happened here. One, the Fuji I think more properly exposed the image. You can change this in RAW for sure, but if you look, there is a lot more detail on the Snowman, in my opinion, compared to the Fuji file. Is this a Lightroom thing? Is this just because the lens is a bit softer at 1.4 compared to the Micro Four Thirds sensor? I don't know. Now, the caveat I had to tell you about, if you zoom in, I'll put these right here. I tried to focus on the eye of Frosty. On the Olympus shot, it's dead nuts accurate. The resolution detail is there in the eye. If you look at the Fuji file, it looked like it got to the brim of the hat. Now, that's partially my fault for not checking focus afterwards, but I have to tell you guys, I did have the box over Frosty's eye, so the lens just happened to miss. I'm not dogging on Fuji, it's just that maybe the XE2 body, which is what I shot on, if I didn't mention that already, it's the 16 megapixel XE2 body. It just missed focus. I should have checked that there. So maybe that's, maybe that's something you guys can yell at me about. But again, the colors, now that I compare them side by side, I prefer the output from this RAW file, which you can change in post, from the Olympus, which is crazy to me. I didn't think that'd be the case. So yeah, super interesting. Real quick, before I go to this last image, I do want to say something. I picked the XE2 because it's all that I have with me at the moment. And the truth is, if you shot an XT3 or an XT4, would it be better? 26 megapixel versus 16 megapixel? Probably. But I don't know how much you would notice it. So you guys can crucify me for that. I want to get into something else before this next image though. Last thing. If you zoom in, I'm going to do a screen over right here. If you zoom in and look at the way Lightroom does the pixels, and hopefully this shows up to you guys, the image noise is cleaner on the Olympus compared to the Fuji in Lightroom. And that's been throwing me off for a little bit. I haven't tried this in Capture One yet, and I know that's the big thing with Fuji files, but the actual image noise is better for a well-lit shot, the way Lightroom processes it compared to a Fuji. So there's that as well, at least for my comparison. The last shot here is just me trying to take a self-portrait. Now the way I did this, highly inaccurate. I just took the camera, held it at arm's length, focused, and shot, okay? So two things you have to note is that it looks like the Olympus grabbed my eye, whereas, again, probably a fault to the body. The Fuji looks like it grabbed the tip of my nose, so my eyes are a little bit out of focus. But two things you have to notice, if you haven't seen this so far, the 35-1.4 seems to actually be a little bit longer. I think it's a 52 equivalent versus the 25 is a true 50. So you get a little bit more reach out of the 35. But second, look at the color differences. Look at my skin tones after I apply that Lightroom, the way Lightroom handles it compared to the Olympus. They're very different. They're very different. And if you look at the depth of field, you can see my address over the back. There's a lot more depth of field, or I'm sure shallower depth of field on the Fuji compared to the Olympus. But they're both, I think, are sufficient. For me, if I look at this, I zoom into what my beard's going on here, there's a ton of detail on the Olympus shot. And if you look at the Fuji, still a lot of detail, but the Olympus seems a bit sharper. Could that be because I misfocused? Is the lens not as accurate for focusing on that body? Does the sensor stabilization have something to do with it? I don't know. But I was kind of surprised. I was expecting it to be very equivalent, or the Fuji to blow it away. But that's not the case. Now, I'll pause here for a second because if you think this was the dumbest comparison ever, it was very unscientific. It was not great. And I just wanted to do it for myself. And I figured, well, if I'm going to do it for myself, I'm going to show you guys. Both cameras, both lenses, very fantastic, very capable of making great images. No problem there whatsoever. You might prefer the Fuji colors over the Olympus colors. Again, these are a Lightroom preset, so how they come out of camera actually looks a lot different. That might be important to you. It's important to me. All those different things. But I think it's really interesting if somebody is sitting in Micro Four Thirds, whether you're on the 16 megapixel sensor or the 20 megapixel sensor. If you put one of these pieces of pro glass in front of it, you're going to get really, really good results. So no problems there. So with that, I just wanted to kind of show you guys what all that looks like. I don't even know if I did a good job with this whole thing, but I wanted to put those 4 images together and show you guys what everything looks like and get your opinion. I just thought it'd be interesting. So yeah, again, this lens used is probably like $700, $800 used. This one's like 400 used, 500 used, I don't know, depends. So it's actually a cheaper lens, and it's a smaller lens too. If you guys look at the two, I got lens hoods on, but it is a smaller lens. So all that stuff comes into play. This is fully weather sealed. It focuses internally. It's got a manual focus clutch, all those different things. This, the front element moves. It's not weather sealed. It is noisy, slower to focus. It's an older lens, but this lens does have some magic to it, and I was actually really surprised with this lens as well. So you can't go wrong either way, guys. I just wanted to put this comparison out there for you guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you have any questions, I can do that. I missed a lot of things. This isn't technical. I just wanted to share some thoughts. So appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.